We're back with Jenna. We're going to start off with something light. Given only a choice between the Beatles or Elvis, who would you listen to?
Oh, I would pick the Beatles. My mom was a huge Paul McCartney fan, so I grew up with the Beatles. Actually, I have a very cool poster in my living room that was my mom's when she was a teenager. That I found in the basement, and I got a an artist that's a tattoo artist and also makes frames, and he made this really beautiful frame with music notes around the edges. So I have that in my living room. So it's cool because the music reminds me of being a kid, and the poster was my mom's, and so it's nice to have that. But yeah, I would choose the Beatles.
Do you have a particular favorite Beatles song or just like the genre?
I mean, I think I like all of them, but I do also like the later Paul McCartney stuff, Wings, etc.
All right. A defining moment, it changes us from the person that we were to the person that we became. What was yours and how did it change you? And you can define this however you want.
Sure. I definitely think a big turning point for me was joining the Peace Corps. I joined just after college, and I spent a little over 2 years in the Dominican Republic doing environmental work mainly. And that was something that definitely gave me so much more perspective. I lived in a small village, rarely having electricity, running water. The next English speaker was an hour away. So I needed to learn Spanish pretty quickly. And I think that getting out of your comfort zone, seeing how the rest of the world lives, and just meeting different people from different places, I think I've probably in many ways that I don't even recognize, in addition to the ones that I do, have gone back to that experience. And I think that a lot of people could benefit from getting out in the world and seeing what else is out there.
Have you been back since you left the Peace Corps?
I haven't, which is so crazy. I remember when I left, thinking, oh, this is goodbye for maybe a year or something like that, and I'll come right back. But honestly, you come back to the States and you start working, and it's like, how is the time flying by the way that it is? One thing too, during the time that I finished my service and moved back, a lot of my friends, my Dominican friends, actually have come to the States. So I've actually seen some of them here now that they're in New York, Boston, etc. So in a way, I have gotten to see people. But a group of friends of mine, other American volunteers, we've been talking about figuring out a time to all go back together, which would be really cool.
In terms of modeling, what do you feel is the difference between a good client and a bad client?
Um, I would say, I mean, if we're talking about clients in the sense of I'm a model and the photographer is the client, I would just say somebody, I mean, I only want to shoot with somebody who's respectful, especially when it comes to boundaries, etc. If I get any kind of feeling during the logistics phase where you're kind of emailing back and forth and figuring out what the shoot's going to entail and all of that kind of stuff, if I feel like this isn't it, I will just politely, bow out of the conversation. Good luck with your work, that kind of thing. To me, there's no reason to take the risk. So when I think about good client, bad client, I would think about somebody that I can like get through the logistics phase without an issue. They make me feel really comfortable. And then obviously the shoot itself is what I expected from a respectful conversation. So that's where I guess I would split the line.
Fair enough. What are some of the most common challenges that you've experienced as a creative?
I would say, it is a job. Modeling is a job for sure. So, I think that models deserve to be compensated for their work. I think that, sometimes you have to work with a photographer of what the expectations are going to be. How far are we traveling? How long, like, all of that kind of stuff, I think is all the things that you work out with a photographer beforehand to see if the project works for both of you. Um, yeah, so I'd save that.
All right. How would you describe your aesthetic?
Oh, I kind of like to have like an artsy I guess a lot of my poses that I really like are kind of like artsy, languid, kind of timeless sort of things. Not to say that I don't like to play with other stuff here and there, but when I think about my favorite photos, I like to accentuate the lines of the body. Like I feel like I've learned over the years what poses really work for my curves. And so that's where I feel the most comfortable, obviously, because that's where I, know that I'm doing well. Um, so I like those kind of pieces. I also love the idea of doing different like eras, different times. If you can get like the hair and makeup to do that kind of stuff, I think that's really fun. Again, I'm like a history nerd, so I love those things. But yeah, I guess my aesthetic would run along those lines. But it is important for a model to be able to, change and flex with whatever the project is calling for.
You've mentioned a couple of times that you're a history nerd. Is there any particular, um, I don't want to say like a focus, but is there any particular time period that interests you the most?
Can kind of get into anything. I will watch like on the History Channel. They have those shows about World War II. Like I will watch. I love fashion history. I love to think about like what was going on at the time during like maybe that's why that was affecting the fashion. I've just always found that interesting. I always read historic novels when I was a kid, and I always thought those classes were the most interesting. That's the movies I watch. Um, but yeah, I guess yeah, there's not really a time. I mean, I love the royal family throughout time. So I always get sucked into that kind of stuff.
If you like the royal family, have you seen any clips of The Crown?
I love The Crown. That was so good. I think Claire Foy was so great as the young Queen Elizabeth. I thought that was so good.
I'll have to put in a word for Matt Smith too. That dynamic was way different than what most people knew him from. The his Doctor Who role. Don't ask me which one it was. It's been on for quite a while, but also he it's a very different dynamic than what the American audience see him as. Was it was he Daemon in the House of the Dragon?
Oh yes, that's right. That's right.
It's all three of those roles are like way different from each other. So, um, all right. I can't remember if I asked this question, but any nuggets of wisdom you'd like to share with someone working with you for the first time?
I would say, setting expectations early so that both people know that they're, getting what they want for the project. There's no surprises. Usually surprises aren't good in that sense. That way everybody's very clear on what you're working on. Planning out the site that you're going to go to beforehand, and if it's something that like outside or not your own studio or something like that, having a plan B is always a good idea, just because you never know.
And from my own experience, having a plan C, D, E, and F.
Exactly. I once went to go do a waterfall shoot, and when we got there, there was no water. So you need to know
Oh,
what
please
else
tell
you're
me how that
doing.
worked out.
I actually can't even remember where we went after that. We must have gone somewhere else in the park or something, but it had just not rained for like a month. The photographer had checked out the place a month ago. And so when we showed up, it was a waterfall with no water. So we still joke about it now. Anytime he picks me up with a shoot, we're not going to repeat that. But it was just a classic. This is why you need to know where else we could go in case.
All right. We're gonna take a short break, and we'll be right back.